Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Dad Says Stuff. This is day 2 of this channel. I'm going to keep going as long as I can, I guess. So please like and subscribe, leave a comment if you will, and let me know what you want to hear about. So today, what I want to talk about is school choice. School choice is something that's near and dear to my heart. My kids have all gone to a charter elementary school, and I loved it. We saw a lot more from the teachers. There was a lot more input. There was a lot more change at the direct level and less change coming from the DO or the district office. I love school choice. I think it's probably the fix for a lot of the problems in the world, or at least in America, I'm sorry. You know, what you hear a lot of complaints about is that communities are segregated out. You hear some people complaining that it's a class structure issue. You hear some people saying it's a racial issue. Some people say it's a gender issue. It doesn't really matter what you think the issue is. If you want a more level playing field, school choice is kind of your option here. What it does is it takes the money that a school would normally get directly and move that to the family to allow them to choose what school they want that money to go to. So your taxes kind of pay for student education, right? So in our city that I live in, we have, I think, 12 or 13 elementary schools. You can kind of see where the money goes across the different elementary schools. Who has the most money? They tend to have the better grades, better averages, those types of things, better outcomes, and vice versa. So the lowest level, the lowest tax revenue schools tend to have the worst outcomes, the worst grades, things like that. What I think is really important to think about is, are we trying to make a system that is equal across time, or are we trying to make a system that is equal now? So when you look at solutions for these types of problems, funding is always something that gets brought up by administrators. And I don't think that funding is actually the problem at this point. If you take $100 million and throw it into a school, I'm sure it would turn around, right? Because you'd have all those people with that $100 million to come in and fix all the issues, whatever they are. But in reality, like long term, if the tax base is the only revenue guaranteed to the school every year, you're not going to see huge changes over time. You'll see some huge changes individually when some parent comes in or some donor comes in that really has a passion for the school that they're working at, and you'll see like a drastic change happen in those schools. But the tax base is the problem. They don't get the funding behind it. So why I think school choice is so important is it takes that tax base and unguarantees it. And if you look at that, it sounds like, oh no, you want your school to have funding. You want them to know year over year what kind of funding they're going to have, how they're going to be able to operate, and things of that nature. But if you actually look at removing that automatic funding or whatever it is, you're going to get X% of the tax base in your area. If you get rid of that and you make it more based on the outcomes of the students, or the overall grade levels, or whatever metric you want to put in place, you could probably see an increase if it's based on where the student and the teacher and the family, the student and the family actually want to go to school. It being right next door is convenient, and you'll see, I'm sure, a ton of people would stay in their districted areas. But what wouldn't happen is students who excel wouldn't be given the same opportunities at that school as, say, like a higher valued school tax-wise. When you take the school voucher, it removes the automatic tax base funding that you would expect every year. And it makes it so that you'll still know the amount of students available throughout the city or the county or however you want to break it up, but you have to be competitive. So you can't sit on really, really bad teachers. You can't sit on horrible policies. You can't let the teachers get really, really comfortable teaching things that are obviously against what most people believe. And And, this is where you get into those, basically all of the culture war issues that pop up. Teachers are probably on the front lines of the culture war. They're basically the first ones who are introducing your child to the culture, unless you're homeschooling. And, we hear a lot of complaints about where the culture is going. There's a huge divide happening between really conservative and really liberal. I don't even think liberal is the right word for it. I guess woke. Yeah, I'm going to say woke. You get a really big divide between the two groups. So what this would do is put a competitive edge for basically giving the parents the ability to decide what values they want to inculcate in their children. So the cool thing about this would be, if you do want a super woke school, right? If you want your kid to go to a school that is all about gender theory and critical race theory and those types of things, you can find that school. That school exists, I'm sure. And you can make your students go there. And granted, it will probably expand the gap. It'd make it much larger. But what it would also do is create a competitive, like a competitive environment for teachers, for administrators, for schools, for everything. There'd be some marketing that would add into it that would probably be slightly damaging to students in the beginning, but you would see a lot of change in these cultural driving issues, because people would vote with their dollar, right? You're paying the tax base starting. Your dollar would go a lot farther, and convincing these teachers that they should, teach whatever values that you believe in, whether, it's a value that's predominant in your area or not. Schools of each value would pop up. And this goes back really far in like American history. If we go back far enough, you can look and see what schools used to be. It was basically a pod. You would have a community of people together who would hire one person to be the teacher for kids across, K through 6 or whatever it was. And the actual industrialized version of what we have today is really only based in the last, I think, century, probably, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this idea of having children basically go through a factory line, right? So you sit at a desk all day and you stare at your teacher and listen to them lecture. And, you have specified breaks every X, it really closely follows what the working laws are. Like in California, we have a law called AB 60, Assembly Bill 60, which is basically a bill telling you have to take lunch or the company has to pay a penalty to you of an hour, right? So that works really well when you have factories or really regulated industries that need a lot of structure that could be damaging without it to the worker or whatever. But for students, I don't know about you, but my kids do not act like factory workers ever. They're crazy. They have a lot of energy. They run around a lot. My daughter's a little better at sitting still for longer periods, but she is still crazy. She's 7 years old. She can't sit still for 2 hours at a time. It's insane. I think school choice builds out the idea that you want to cater to both the student and the parent. So instead of catering to an administrator or a politician, which is kind of how we do now, right? Like school is based specifically on regulatory issues. You see it all the time in colleges. You're seeing it, and I hate always going back to COVID, but you see it with COVID too. Every single school in my state did pretty much the exact same thing, and it was horrible. It did nothing. The kids weren't dying of coronavirus at any really statistically relevant rate, and we still closed the schools for a year, or just shy of a year, and that's a little bit crazy. You have students who now are under socialized, definitely. You have students who are, they built a routine around being home and now they're back in school. You have teachers who were used to dealing with large numbers of students via Zoom, and now they're back in classrooms. And there's no acclimation. There was no acclimation period. It was just jump into it. So, I think we're about 2 months in, and I'm very glad that the students are all back in the classroom. But you can see the damage that has been done to our students and to our kids and things like that. So why I say school choice is the next time a pandemic or an epidemic of some kind comes around, you'll have the opportunity to decide what you want to do with your student. So if, say, elementary school A is going to go, we're going to close for coronavirus, then elementary school B can take those students, get those vouchers, and increase their overall funding levels. And this would really, really dramatically reduce the amount of government intervention in schools and really, really increase the total amount of, I guess amount is the wrong word, just increase the total education style. The teachers would have to respond to the students' wants and needs, and there would be a lot more pressure from parents and students than from government and administrators. And obviously that has to be the route we go. If you want government and administrators running classrooms, then government and administrators should be the teachers, right? But you don't. You have some administrative teachers. You have a principal. That makes sense, right? They run your school. They help you run your school. They make sure that the teachers have what they need. They understand the process of the education. And they can sit down with the teachers and help them, figure out what they want. But the method that we have right now is based on the idea that a unionized teacher corps has control over not teaching your students, but over when and where your students are, if that makes sense. You see a lot coming through COVID. I hate bringing up COVID over and over again, but during COVID, the teacher unions across the country were the ones kind of holding the students out of fear. What I say is, if you're scared, I understand it's a scary virus. It was novel. Nobody really understands what it is or how it works or how to cure it or how to treat it even, especially in the beginning. But, if you were scared of that, and you had every right to stay home. I fully agree with that. Teachers should have had every right to stay home. But, it's the same idea as like there's a really bad cold or flu coming around. You would have the same right to stay home, but you'd probably get fired. And to be honest, you weren't doing your job. The government told you not to, so you can't hate on teachers for making that decision. But, there was no incentive for them to go back to work. They were getting paid not to work. They were getting a lot of pressure from unions. I know a couple of teachers who I really respect. Like, I really, really respect a few of the teachers I know. But you could see that there was a lot of pain trying to get back to schools. And it wasn't from the teachers. It's from the union heads and from the administrative bodies. If it was the teachers, if it was a real teachers union, if it was actually looking at what teachers wanted, I guarantee you the kids would have been back in school within a month. No teacher wanted to keep the kids out of school and do Zoom and all that stuff that I saw. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure if you go on TikTok, you can find all sorts of crazy teachers who just, didn't want to go back to the class. I've seen some where teachers are sitting there crying because kids don't have to wear masks, which is a little silly. But this idea that the administrators and the teacher union heads should have the power and the control over what the teachers actually want to do, and don't listen to their constituents in this situation. They just kind of do what they think is right or what's going to make them money. And it was kind of what pushed forward the pandemic on the children's side. So what I would say is that without school choice, we're going to see this again. It's going to happen next time there's some random pandemic that pops through. And, I think we're at like 600 total children dead in the United States from coronavirus. And I think it's about 1% of that without extreme comorbidities. So what we did is we sacrificed a huge portion of time for our children to learn to be fearful and to learn that older people are more important than they are. That's kind of twisted to me. I really think that, you know, I'm 35 years old, so I can't say like I'm an old person willing to sacrifice myself, but I would die for my children. 100%. I would take a bullet for them. I don't care, whatever it is. If it's a disease, I'd die of a disease. I don't care. For my children to succeed, for my children to thrive, so that there's a future that they can be excited about, that they can be proud about. I would 100% lay my life down for that. I have no doubt in my mind. But I understand why teachers wouldn't want to lay down their lives for students. Again, all that being said, this just opens up the idea that we need more competitive schooling. We need schooling to be not mandated by the government. Again, I live in California. California is a horrible place for politics. It's illegal to keep your kid out of school more than 10 days, I believe is the law right now. So if you keep your kid out of school for 10 days, you can have CPS show up at your door. But at the same time, they're told they couldn't go to school. If you want to teach your kids things that are not necessarily in agreement with what the political policy of California is, you're going to get in trouble for that too. There's no necessary laws, but I have seen, like, here's a good example. This isn't a political thing, but just in general. When I was working in a clinic, I had one of my employees who thought that their daughter was texting too much. Makes sense, right? I'm sure it happens to everybody. So they took the phone away, told him, you're not going to get your phone back until whatever. The daughter called the police on her mom, said that the reason why she was calling was because she took her phone away, and she had a CPS case started on her within a day. This is really anecdotal. I'm sure it's not evidentiary of like what CPS does on a daily basis, but there's no method to get rid of those erroneous cases now. You see this happen a lot in California. We have a ton of CPS cases open. There's children who are definitely abused, who need Child Protective Services to come in and help them. But I would say probably the majority of the CPS cases now are based on just insane things that don't actually make sense. There was not too long ago a CPS case opened on a father who didn't want to call his, I don't know the right way to say this, so I'm just going to say it, but his transgender daughter, so his daughter was born a man, or born a boy, and wanted to transition to a female. And he had a CPS case open on him because he didn't want to use his name, the new name. I think it was like Ashley from Adam, or I don't really remember. It's been a little bit. But, these are the type of things that CPS is definitely not needed for. There is no need for CPS involvement in that case. So you'll see that more and more coming for conservative valued people. I say conservative value, but really just freedom-minded people. Like, I don't want my kids to have to wear a mask to school. I think it's kind of dumb. And if you gave me a voucher, I would take my kids out of the school they're in today. I don't have any love for the schools. There's some teachers I do love that our kids have been very, very blessed to have. But I have no interest in supporting stupid policies anymore and giving teachers the right to really destroy the value system that we've built for our children. And I say teachers, and I keep saying that, but what I really mean is the administrators and not the principals. The principals care. It's the superintendents and up. The school boards, the superintendents, they have no idea what they're doing. They're following a political pulse that they don't understand, and they're causing a lot of damage to our students and to our families. So I guess I will leave it with this. I think the only option here is to pull government funding from schools directly and move it to a school choice voucher program. Without doing something like that, all we're going to see is continued changes through political vectors that don't have a real strong understanding of what is going to happen when they do make these drastic changes. I would like to see this happen at a local level in my area, and build out across. But in all honesty, what likely is going to happen is going to get a lot worse. our students are probably going to become more automated. Schools are moving more and more away from individualized learning plans. You get these IEP things and these 504s and things like that, but there's really no basis of individualism for the student, and any basis of individualism built out for the student that isn't based on like a disability or skin color or something like that. Anything that's outside of that is now going to be standardized across the board and taken to a point where students learn less and less and less and less and less. My assumption is that my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren are probably not going to be able to graduate high school with a third grade reading level. I just don't think I doubt that will be a goal of the students, of the school boards, by the time, I have grandkids. So, little bit of a black pill to end on, but, gotta say what I think. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I really hope to see you next time, and make sure to like and subscribe, comment if you would. And also, God bless you guys. I hope you're doing well, and I love you all.